as soon as I enter into this platform, it brought me back to my early childhood days, and it was really striking. And so I just wanted to start with the recognition that I'm really excited and really to be here, but then also very creative on the organizers' part, that they set up such a innovative way to meet in a conference. But let's get to business here. So NYPA has been working on e-mobility and primarily charging infrastructure for a long time. Our program is really 20 years old. And we started from something that I should say before I forget. So this presentation is actually made by John Markowitz. John unfortunately couldn't be here today, so I am filling in for him I'm sure in a very poor way, but I'll try to do my best. And then if you have very specific questions on the program, John would be the best person to reach out to. So I was saying 20-year-old program, and we really started from an R&D standpoint, working together with NYSERDA, right, Jason's team, DOE, and many other stakeholders in New York State, working on, if you think about 20 years ago, very few people thought electrification would have been possible to the degree that we are seeing today. And we were working on hybrid transit buses. We were doing a lot of level 2 and also the early DC fast charging projects. Together with NYSERDA, we deploy about 100 level 2 chargers. And we also have still ongoing a DC fast charging pilot with Thruway. So if you stop at in one of the many rest areas of the Thruway, you may see some of the DC fast chargers deployed there. Typically, they are 50 kilowatts, but I think there is a intent to actually increase the capacity of those chargers. And our team is small but mighty. We are 10 people. We're doing a lot, and I have to give kudos to my team. Sometimes I see them going around on Saturdays and Sundays testing chargers and things like that. So speaks to the commitment that certainly NYPA and the e-mobility team has to improve electrification in New York State. It's the regional transportation in New York State. So one of our biggest program is called Evolve New York. There was a strategic decision of our board to allocate $250 million throughout 2025 to deploy very high-speed charging infrastructure throughout New York State. The main corridors are covered, and quite frankly, also those areas that we call charging deserts, primarily in upstate New York, that today don't have a good coverage. And the intent is clear, right? If you need to drive an EV throughout New York State, we want to make sure that range anxiety is not an issue. And a part of that is really, once you lower range anxiety, that, would in turn improve the electric vehicle adoption throughout New York State. If you look at surveys, the biggest hurdle right now is the cost of electric vehicles, and that's coming down the cost curve very, very fast. So probably now or in the next few years, you're going to have some degree of cost parity with internal combustion engine. The second issue is, okay, great, the vehicle is affordable, but where can I charge if I need to travel long distances? And so we're really addressing that barrier. What we do, we have a pool of about 20 firms, and actually we are enlarging this pool now by including even more firms. And we run, we pre-qualify those vendors, and then we run mini bids. So we have pools of projects that we are that we intend to move forward with, and then we mini bid them to those firms and contractors. And well, here see, the then Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul now obviously is our governor, and Gil Quinones. Also, many of you know, Gil recently announced that he was resigning from NYPA and going to work for an investor-owned utility. But here see some an example of one of our DC fast charging stations. Let's talk about something probably more relevant to this audience, which is the services that we offer around level 2 charging and DC fast charging for fleets. I'm sure many of you here have fleets, large, small, etc., and many of you may have plans to electrify their fleet over time. And so we team up, we partner with many of our customers, many of our stakeholders, to really help think through that transition, develop a blueprint. Typically, the way we like to do it is just not do a small project, but really think strategically about, okay, what is the overarching goals? It may be, hey, we want to be fully electrified in 10 years, in 15 years, and really work through those challenges ranging from which vehicles we're going to acquire, what's going to be the replacement strategy for those vehicles, and then also charging infrastructure, right? Is there going to be primarily a depot charging? Do we need DC fast charging? Do we need DC fast charging in route or at the depot, and so on and so forth? And so we tackle workplace charging, fleet charging, public charging, and also transit bus charging, which quite frankly has been probably 90% of our business so far. We're working right now with MTA, for example, to electrify, to help them develop the charging infrastructure for about 70 buses that they've procured. And that's going to be an increasing, there's going to be some increasing procurement over time. I think they have overall, the guys don't quote me on that, but I think between 5,000, 6,000 buses. And that's going to be, it's going to be a decade-long program to electrify the entire fleet, and with many, many challenges. But, we are ready, we are teaming up with MTA and ready to tackle those challenges. Here is an example of a project as a customer-owned, meaning NIPA doesn't own the chargers. This is really a turnkey service that we provide to the end customer. And 400 ports, working with OGS and also through the Recharge New York program, and really deploying the level 2 charging infrastructure across different geographies that you see below there. Another sample project, I talked briefly about this earlier, Thruway in New York City DOT. We are deploying a number of DC fast chargers, indoor, outdoor, at parking locations. As you can see, the projects are always fairly large, right? 20 chargers, 8 chargers, that's our sweet spot. And then the transit buses, much of the funding comes from the Volkswagen settlement, as you guys know, and we have also some additional funding. I'm hoping Jason from NYSERDA and maybe DEC also, you guys can maybe touch upon some of the incentives available and what's coming down the pike. But certainly, Volkswagen settlement is, it's a good amount of money. It's not going to be there forever, so we need to look at what other funding sources we're going to have down the road. And I think, fingers crossed, the federal infrastructure bill is going to pass in a way that is going to really support some of those initiatives here. What's interesting to note from a technology standpoint, we are very familiar with the installation of pantograph chargers. Those are those chargers that you basically, you have a pantograph, right? This trellis that from the bus moves toward the charger, or maybe sometimes from the chargers goes down to the bus, and really is used to charge the bus or the vehicle without human intervention. We are familiar with many of the standards. Here's one as an example, SCA 3105. This is, if you have like a transit fleet that you're looking to electrify, I would say come to us, talk to us. We can give you some advice, always happy to have those conversations. And then also we offer, like I touched on that before, fleet advisory services. So we have the full gamut ranging from flexibility studies feasibility study for fleet electrification, electrical capacity, looking at whether there's enough service from the utility, route planning, figuring out, what is the life cycle cost for switching the vehicles, and what is the right time and strategy. And then also, if you want to do your own RFP, we can support with the preparation of bids. I think that's it. Yeah, I think we could probably, for sake of time, Dean, unless you wanted me to go here, we can probably skip those 2 slides. And just maybe I want to just mention that right now we're running a New York State-wide transit bus master planning study together with NYSERDA and New York State DOT. And most of the upstate transit agencies are participating, and we are really excited because we are getting so many insights in terms of the challenges of electrification, and really we are bringing back ultimately those insights, right, to the chamber, to New York State, to make sure that the policies are aligned with the challenges that we are facing and are supporting us tackling those challenges. So that's it from me, guys. Thank you. And this is a view of the Niagara Falls, where we have our, one of our hydroelectric power plants.
Great. Thank you, Fabio. I think maybe we'll wait for questions until the end, because I think our speakers are going to overlap in their subject material, so they may want to trade off who answers which question. So I guess we'll continue with Jason. And Jason's going to also cover things about charging infrastructure, buses and fleets, and whatever else he wants to put in his little talk.
Thank you, Dean. Audio is working fine?
Yep, we can hear you. Great.
Well, a pleasure to be with you, and thank you, attendees, and to everybody here for the opportunity to talk through some of these issues. We've similarly with NYPA been engaged on clean transportation issues for probably a generation now, including low emissions technologies from off-road equipment, early stage R&D for batteries and electric motors, and all the way up through the kind of commercialization and scaling of activities in the EV space and the EV charging space in the last 5 to 10 years. But certainly in the last 5 years, things have really started to accelerate. I'll just sort of speak to you about what's going on. I don't have slides today, so I'll cover a few of the key points that relate to the engagement that we're doing with municipalities, and some of the programs that are running right now, some that are evolving. I guess the key thing that NYSERDA has been doing on the vehicle side is, for some time now, we've been doing the light duty EV rebate, the Drive Clean program. That program has been very successful in increasing the number of EVs in the state. That we're a signatory to the ZEV MOU, which allows the Clean Air Act, allows other states to join California's higher standards of emissions control. And so as a ZEV signatory, we have a target of 850,000 vehicles, or roughly 8 to 10% of the fleet in the state of New York. The light duty fleet would be electric by 2025. And so the Drive Clean rebate has been very helpful in beginning to, tilt the curve or bend the curve towards the adoption that's necessary. There's still plenty more to do. And there are right now in New York, about 80 to 85,000 EVs. About half of those are all electric, and the other half are plug-in hybrids. But the Drive Clean rebate's been very successful since this burn rate has been increasing, and we're looking at ways that we can provide additional funding for that, and look at ways that we can better tune that to the market need. Another key piece of incentive that's been available and has been successful is the New York Truck Voucher Incentive Program, which is providing some or all of the incremental cost on top of a fossil fuel bus or truck, or anything in classes 3 to 8. The Truck Voucher Incentive Program provides a voucher that covers 95% of the additional cost of acquiring a low emissions or zero emission substitute vehicle. That money is sourced from two main funding pots. One is the Volkswagen settlement, and the other is CMAQ, which is federal money coming through New York State DOT. And there are various program constraints. One that has been somewhat challenging is that there's a scrappage requirement that comes along with the Volkswagen settlement funds. So a vehicle has to come off the road for any new vehicles. A vehicle 2009 or older has to come off the road and have its engine, have it bored or have it drilled, a core section removed so that the truck is fully undrivable from that point on. And that is a sort of a one-to-one requirement. And we're trying to, adapt the program to make that a little bit easier for fleets that may not have the ability to take a vehicle off the road or are concerned about the loss of residual value from a truck that may be coming off the road. I know Myra and DC will talk about some of the direct municipal rebates, turning to, because some exist for vehicles and for infrastructure, turning to charging infrastructure and the way that NYSERDA is helping to prepare the ground for EV adoption and to create a market and to assist with the early development of the market. We have recently just exhausted the funds of a level 2 program that was very successful in getting a couple thousand charging stations built on the level 2 side in the public workplace and multi-unit dwelling program. That was the Charge Ready program that, as I said, just exhausted its funds, but we are in the process of assessing how we can take the next step with that program and target those funds to areas of need that may not be as quickly responded to by the market. Things like multi-unit dwelling charging, possibly workplace charging. So more to come on that. There are right now about 6,000 level 2 ports in New York and about 700 fast charging ports. We have some targets associated with some research that we've done to get to that are kind of linked to the 2025 vehicle target of 850,000 vehicles, EVs. That would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000, north of 50,000 level 2s, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 fast charging ports. So there's a long way to go there in the next 4 years, but we are hard at work. So we do have some Volkswagen settlement money that is going towards a fast charge program that NYSERDA is running right now as a competitive solicitation. We've run 2 rounds of it already. We have a 3rd round running later this year, and that's been successful in seeing some responses and getting charging stations built. So we're focused in that program on upstate New York, which has been relatively under-resourced with fast charging. The Charge Ready program was statewide and probably will be in a future iteration. The fast charge program has to date focused on upstate. Possibly we widen the geographic frame as that program evolves and matures. And certainly, as to Fabio's point, we believe that there will probably be some additional funding and an expansion of the programs as the federal bills come through. And that's very exciting. We're also very closely watching the scoping effort and the Climate Action Council's work to define how we implement the CLCPA and look to whatever new funding mechanisms may come out of that in order to allow NYSERDA and other state partners to do more work and to kind of meet the scale of this challenging electrification transition. So I think I'll hold there. There's more we can talk about. There are other sort of instruments of support, some of the tax credits that exist for vehicles or for charging. We can get into that, but I think those are the key points, and we can talk about some more of that in Q&A.
Okay. Great, thank you, Jason. That's an amazing amount of effort that you're going through there to get this charging infrastructure established, including upstate where it's kind of sparse and where you need it because people drive longer distances. That's excellent. Myra, if you're ready, I'm going to turn to you and talk a little bit about ZEV and vehicle infrastructure rebates and incentives, grants, whatever you can come up with.
Okay, just the volume test. Want to make sure everybody hears me.
Yep, can hear you fine. Can't see you.
Okay, and I'm going to share my screen. I do have a PowerPoint here. Okay. Can everybody see this?
Yep, that's all good. It's still in your,
Perfect.
there you go, full screen. That's
All
right.
right. Wonderful. So thank you all for having me. Thank you everyone for attending. I am very thrilled to hear that there were 300 people that registered for a conference on the environment. So thank you for your interest. Like Dean said, I'm Myra Fedenyak. I'm from the Office of Climate Change at the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And I'm going to be telling you about our Municipal Zero Emission Vehicle Program. And at first, I wanted to do a little bit of background. You did hear some of this from Jason back in 2013. New York State and 7 other states signed a ZEV MOU to get 3.3 million ZEVs on the road by 2025. And, you know, New York's share of that was about 800,000 vehicles. So that's one of the reasons we have all of these programs. More recently, in 2020, I believe it was, 14 states, New York and DC, signed a heavy-duty vehicle MOU, which is aimed at getting electrification of the heavy-duty vehicles going. As of the previous 2013 MOU, focused mainly on light-duty vehicles. Then in 2019, we had the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act passed, and that is requiring the state to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 40% in 9 years, and then 85% by 2050. And even more recently, just last month, the governor signed a bill requiring all light-duty vehicles sold in New York State to be electric by 2035. So there is a lot going on. And as you can see from this graphic, transportation is our biggest source of emissions. So it's the biggest source of emissions. And in a way, it's the toughest nut to crack because it essentially requires every single person in New York to change the way they drive. So given all of this, the state as a whole has been working, as you've heard from the other 2 presenters, at increasing the adoption and awareness of electric vehicles in the state. And, you know, this kind of overall sort of umbrella initiative was called Charge New York 2.0, and it involves all kinds of number of different agencies and authorities. And, you know, we're working on getting the EV charging stations installed, getting the travel corridors named and designated, and just overall supporting the growth of the EV market in New York State. Our program by statute is required to focus just on municipalities. So whereas some of the other programs focus from other agencies or authorities focus on, multiple unit dwellings or the private sector, we can only focus on municipalities. And we have 2 funding programs for New York State municipalities. We have the vehicle rebates, and then we have the infrastructure grants. There is also a little bit of tie-in to the Climate Smart Community Certification Program and the grants that go along with that. And I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. So the rebates are available to, like I said, municipalities. We define currently municipalities as a county, city, town, village, or a borough of New York City. The quasi-municipalities, such as a solid waste authority or a school district, currently are not eligible for this program. We do hope to change that at some point, but it is a long, tedious process, and it will take some time, but stay tuned. So the rebate is good for a purchase or a lease of 36 months or more of a new eligible clean vehicle. They can be all battery electrics, they can be plug-in hybrids, or they can be hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. A standard hybrid that you can't plug in is not eligible. Neither are those golf cart type mule things that the parks departments like to have, and no e-bikes. I've been asked about e-bikes. These are all roadworthy vehicles that we give rebates for. The rebates range between $2,500 and $7,500 per vehicle based on the electric range of that vehicle. A vehicle that gets 50 to 100 miles can get a $2,500 rebate, and the vehicles that get over 201 or more miles of electric range can get a $7,500 rebate. And the maximum currently in the round that's open right now is 150,000 to any one municipality. Municipality can, buy 10 vehicles and put in one application to get a rebate for all 10, or they could just buy one and put in a rebate to get one. Like I said, they must be on-road passenger vehicles. They do have to be placed in service at a New York State dealership. So there are some aggregate programs out there which municipalities are free to use. Just be sure that when you receive the vehicle, it gets routed through a New York State dealership, because you're going to have to provide evidence of that in your application. The vehicles purchased by municipalities obviously must be for fleet use of the municipality. And they do need to be purchased and received before application is made. One of the documents we require in the application is the registration. Then there is the infrastructure grant program. This is supports level 2s, DC fast chargers, and components of hydrogen fuel cell stations. All the stations must be available for public use. There is a little bit of an option for municipalities to partially use the station for fleet charging, but it must remain mainly for public charging. So, in your application, if you were a municipality was to apply for that, they would have to denote when it's public and when it's private, and they have to include the plan with the application. They have to post all the information on site and with all their parking information, so that the public is aware when they can use that charging station. Again, the eligible applicants are county, city, town, village, or New York City borough. This program pretty much covers anything that's involved with installing the station. The equipment, the installation costs, the site preparation. We've paid for meters, we paid for poles, anything that's needed to make that station work. We also cover 2 years worth of electricity that the station's going to use if the municipality is not going to charge the actual user for electricity. And that can include the demand charges for the fast chargers. And we can also cover 2 years of the networking and warranty fees. Some communities, have electricians and staff people that can do some of the work. So we can cover personnel and contractual services for installation. The only thing we can't really cover is, if you need to put in something electrical, and it's going to service a building or a ball field as well as the charging station, that wouldn't be eligible. It has to be just the charging station. And new for this round that's currently open, we have a variable match, 0 to 20% match, which is based on the median household income of the community where the charging station is going to be located. And you can find details about that in the RFA. I will provide a link to the RFA later in this presentation. And it's right here. Details for both the programs, which is essentially the request for applications for each program, can be found on our website. We also have the Climate Smart Communities information there. So just that tends to be on the top, and you'll want to scroll down to find the zero emission vehicle information. Applications are run through the Grants Gateway. This is the link for the Grants Gateway. Municipalities, first of all, need to be registered in the Grants Gateway, and they need to designate someone as a grantee. That person must log in, then search for zero emission vehicle, and select the infrastructure program or the rebate program and start the application from there. So we've done 4 rounds of funding from 2016 to 2019. There was not a round in 2020 due to all of the COVID budget issues. And the round that's currently open is not yet closed. So these numbers don't include any of our most recent, what will be our most recent awards coming next month. We've awarded almost $5 million and supported the purchase of 114 plug-in hybrids, 74 battery electrics, a hydrogen fuel station upgrade, 422 level 2 ports, and 10 DC fast charge pedestals. So it's been kind of exciting. Now, to connect this to the Climate Smart Communities program, in the case that anybody doesn't know what the Climate Smart Community Certification Program is, it's basically a framework that organizes local action on climate change mitigation adaptation. There's a whole lot of actions municipalities can take. They earn different points for doing different actions. When you get a certain number of points, you're certified. And being certified is essentially being recognized as a local leader. So you get these pretty signs that you can hang up, and you get to put the feather in your cap and say, we're a climate smart community. Yeah. And in the Climate Smart certification program, there are several pledge elements. And pledge element 3 is the one that coincides with electric vehicles. PE action 3 is a fleet inventory, the fleet efficiency policy, fleet right sizing, and advanced vehicles. So the first two, the fleet inventory and the fleet efficiency policy, are actually eligible for grant awards through the Climate Smart Communities grant program. That program is run through the consolidated funding application, and it typically opens in May and runs through July. So if there's any interest in doing a fleet inventory or a policy, you may want to look at that program and see if you can get a little bit of funding to make those happen. The fleet right sizing happens in-house inside the municipality, and then once the municipality is ready to obtain some vehicles, they can come to this program to get the rebates for any vehicles any passenger vehicles that they decide to add into their fleet. And in order to reach me or the ZEV program in general, email zevrebate@dec.ny.gov. There's another link to our grants funding webpage, also the Climate Smart Communities portal, if anybody is interested in finding out more about that, and the Grants Gateway, if anybody is interested in applying. This round is open until next Friday, October 29th. So get your applications in. There will be another round of the ZEV program, both the vehicles and the infrastructure grants. We're currently using 2020 funds, and our 2021 funds have already been approved. So it's just going to be a matter of getting this round closed up and the request for applications edited and out the door. So keep your eye out for an announcement, hopefully sometime early next year, maybe late winter, early spring, for the next round of both of these ZEV programs. Here's some more contact information. We have a Facebook page and a Twitter and a Flickr and a regular DEC site. And that is it for me.
Great, thank you, Myra. By the way, just let people know this is being recorded, so you'll be able to access those the slides and the presentations and Q&A and everything afterwards, because there was a lot of website addresses and email addresses that went by there. Is there anybody in the audience that has questions for our panelists? And if you do, walk up to a microphone and unmute yourself and go ahead. Start with, I think we got a couple people one going over to mic A, one going over to, all right, David, you're on deck. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm David Liu from the Ardsley CEAC, and I have a two-part question. The first is, does any of the agencies have any grants or direction for ZEVs with respect to police cruisers and or SUVs that might need, special outfitting, or for that matter, fire chief vehicles, stuff like that. The second part of the question is, we are building a new DPW building, and what programs are there that I can advise the municipality on that they can take advantage of? Thank you.
Myra, that might have been for you as far as the granting goes. It satisfies a question I had as well about police cruisers and maybe even work trucks for municipalities.
We have had police departments purchase vehicles and get a rebate for them. I don't think they were actual cruisers. I know there's been interest in it. My sense was that the available models and options that are out there right now are not exactly what is needed. So there's like work continuing there, the companies who build the cars are continuing to kind of build that out and figure out what people need. That was kind of my sense. I don't know if anybody else has any better information.
And then the second part to his question was regarding funding for building department. I guess basically buildings that will house the EV infrastructure and such. Is there anything like that that's coming from the state that's available, or is it all having to do with EVs and charging infrastructure, poles and such?
I don't know of anything specifically for DPW buildings. We funded the construction of some DPW buildings, but it's only if the one that you currently have is in a floodplain and it's getting flooded and you can't use it for emergency management. That's one of the projects that could be a climate smart communities project. Mm-hmm. But in terms of just building a new building, I don't really know if there's any funding for that.
Okay.
Or which agency it would be in. Potentially, if you want to do a shared service, you could potentially, with another town or village or county, you could potentially look at the Department of State's local government program. Years ago when I worked there, they did fund that. If you were going to use it as a shared building and save taxpayer dollars, you could qualify for a grant through that program.
Yeah, so if I may tack on quickly, is that not necessarily funding, but also consultancy or advisory kind of services, because I'm not sure, maybe because I'm kind of not at the table, with the people who are designing the DPW building, and that is to ensure that the design and what's going to go out in RFP is going to be, forward thinking and has the infrastructure ready for fast charging, a fleet, and all of that.
Yeah, David, on that, if I may, NYPA has a couple of initiatives. So there is one that is specifically focused on transportation and thinking about the charging infrastructure as well as the vehicles within or around the building envelope, right? So thinking about where do you put the charging infrastructure, and so we can provide consultancy services. We do have some funding allocated for that, but we would need also co-funding from the organization that is looking to procure the services. And then I want to add, as you think about building, right, we have an entire distributed energy resources team that is looking at solar energy storage. Typically, they're looking for very large projects, so probably 500 kilowatts and above. So I'm not sure what kind of building you're thinking about, but certainly something that we could explore as well as appropriate.
Okay, thanks. I see Peter McCart, our Westchester County Director of Environmental Services at Mic 1 there. As you might know, Westchester's done a lot of building out now of electric buses. We have a program for that, so I guess Peter has a question.
It was more of a statement to David, because I saw him asking a question, and Fabio stepped right in there. NYPA, you are a NYPA customer, David. You said Ardsley, right? So yeah, that's the best thing to do, is to lean on them. I also wanted to say that when it comes to EVs and EV chargers, this is a county-based project. We're working with Nassau, Suffolk, Albany, Broome, Tompkins, several counties to create a consortium for the purchase of electric vehicles, as well as looking into charging stations. So it's moving along, as we say. We're working with shared services, and what happens, all the municipalities then will be able to piggyback off of that contract. And so just be aware of that, David, going forward. And that's about it. That's all I wanted to say right now.
Okay, great. Michael, I saw you at the mic before Peter started. Fabio, do you have something?
Oh no, I would say thank you for the plug,
okay.
Peter. That
Okay.
yeah, he highlighted NIPA and the good work that we have done together. Much appreciated.
Great.
Yeah, they helped with the design and installation of our charging station for our bus at our bus depot in Valhalla. So we've had delivery already of one electric bus, and we're getting 5 more. I think the second one is coming today or yesterday. I don't know, but the charging of these buses is huge. It's not just your little dinky little car, 230 miles. This is the massive batteries. So charging infrastructure is a key component of it. I will say also for everybody else that's here, what we did for the county was we wrote a law that anytime any work is done on any parking garage or parking lot that the county owns or the county gives money to for some sort of tax break or a pilot or whatever, if we give money to it, they have to also apply 20% of their parking spaces to electric charging. So, writing some, legislation that puts it in stone, going forward is a strong move, I think.
Great.
I'm done.
Okay, Michael, if you move up to mic 1, you can ask your question. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm with the ECC, the Environmental Conservation Commission in Gardner, but my questions are more curiosities from the point of view of an EV owner rather than a municipal administrator. And I would direct them probably at Jason, I think, more than the other folks. Then you mentioned, Jason, that there are 700 fast chargers in New York State now, if I heard you correctly.
That's correct. Though I should clarify that I believe 2/3 of them are for Tesla owners. So we only have between 100 and 200 non-proprietary plugs.
Right. That was going to be my question, whether that included the Tesla. So there are going to be the non-proprietary plugs being rolled out in the future?
Yeah, the focus of both NIPER's program, Evolve New York program, and our DC Fast Charge program are exclusively to construct or have constructed non-proprietary plugs, mostly CCS, which has become the sort of is becoming the unified standard for non-Tesla vehicles. Some CHAdeMO plugs for the remainder of the Leafs, the Nissan Leafs that can take fast charging that are on the road, but are increasingly, coming off of lease or other ways in which they're no longer a presence in the fleet of New York. So CCS is the most pertinent plug, and we're watching closely to see if Tesla makes moves to allow their supercharger network to open up to all vehicles, and things, kind of other market dynamics. But so far, the solicitation that we've run allows for only CCS and CHAdeMO plugs.
And I had heard that as a Tesla owner myself, and I see you sitting in yours too, Jason.
That's right.
That I believe Tesla is on the road to do that, to opening up their network with an adapter to use for other cars.
That's right. Yeah, and if that does happen, then we would evaluate whether it would be appropriate to allow some of the public funding to construct stations that include, proprietary plugs if they were co-located with non-proprietary plugs.
And Jason, is CCS synonymous with, I don't know the exact term, it's something like J1743 or something like that? Plug?
Yeah, there's a standard level 2 connector, and that is for all vehicles, regardless of manufacturer, in United States, I should say. And then the CCS plug is a modification of that connector, J1772. It adds 2 direct current pins underneath it, so it's a larger. It has the sort of CCS, the J1772 circle, and then an oval beneath it, and that was for all American manufacturers and European manufacturers, but Nissan has announced that they're willing to abandon CHAdeMO and adopt CCS, so that suggests that becomes the one non-Tesla plug.
And I know NYSERDA has a online map for for locating chargers. But is that also available in mobile format? Do you know?
No. Well, you could use. So let me back up. So our website embeds the Department of Energy's alternative fuel data center station locator, which exists. They run that. They are an authoritative source of station inventory and location. That's a great tool. That can be viewed on any browser, any browser, whether it's desktop or mobile. Often the user interfaces on the vehicles will have station locators or can connect to that DOE site. And PlugShare is another excellent tool for the purpose of finding stations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next up, I see Bob Fishman at mic number 1 on mic C.
So I actually have 2 questions. The first has to do with the cost of charging as it applies to the municipalities. I'm in the town of Lewisboro, and Jason, unfortunately, we missed out, I think, by just a couple of hours in getting our application in under the charge ready, but we're looking towards DEC right now. So what we see as we analyze this is that that if you curtail the amount of power delivered to a charging station, you can better manage your demand costs. The flip side of that, of course, is that it takes drivers longer to charge, and therefore they are going to be less. They're not going to be as happy about the time it takes to charge the vehicle or how much mileage they're going to get out of that. So I wonder if somebody might be able to speak to whether there is anything that can be done about managing demand costs, particularly as it applies to the charging of EVs. The second question, entirely unrelated, has to do with the, I've done a lot of research and work on bus rapid transit, and I wonder about programs for electric buses, particularly in the corridor where we live here. So, for example, the Mario Cuomo Tappan Zee Bridge with its dedicated lanes, what might be in the offing for electric bus routes and bus rapid transit pairing together that can go a long way towards reducing carbon footprint by getting a lot more passengers and doing that on electrified vehicles. So thank you.
I can speak quickly to the demand charge question. There's ongoing conversations right now with the Department of Public Service and the utilities in New York, as well as the charging station network operators, to identify other tariff options. There's something that was envisioned in the Make Ready program that was passed last summer, that there would be a midpoint review, at which point they would assess the need for rate adjustments or tariff reforms reflected that were better suited to commercial charging. There's also a bill that has not yet been signed into law that would require the utilities to create commercial charging options. So that there's more to play out there, and I would say that that's something we just have to keep an eye on for the next 6 months or so.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
and maybe Jason, if I can follow up on certainly on what you mentioned about tariffs and rates. I think the other option is certainly managed charging, to your point, Bob, right? So making sure that we slow down and we intelligently charge vehicles based on the operational parameters that they need to respect, but then also applying sometimes energy storage. And we have a few pilots where we want to really maximize the value of energy storage by acting as a peak shaving, if you will, device to reduce the to reduce the customer bill, but then also participating in wholesale markets to really maximize the value of that resource.
Very clever thought.
That's great. Anybody
on
want to
the,
take that question
BRT?
about the BRT and electrified buses?
I think I don't have a concrete answer there, except that there are discussions within the Climate Action Council about how land use and links with transportation, and how all of that amounts together to be a picture of the way in which people move and the mechanisms that people move, and so I think there's some fertile discussion happening there, and we'll see what happens on the other side of the CAC's recommendations for requiring that or incenting that in future planning applications.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Bob, if you could just move away and let
Yep,
our
will do.
Assemblyman Steve Otis take over number 1 there. Steve, do you want to move down, or are you? Oh, maybe he's away. Oh, there it goes. Okay. You got to get to all the way to number 1. There you go.
Thanks for the presentations. And I think that the question I think that the public who maybe wants to buy an electric vehicle asks is they just want to see more visible sign of charging stations. For the different programs that you described, if you got more resources in a fiscal year, how much could you ramp up each of these programs to get more charging stations online sooner?
Let me take that. So this is a great question, Steve, because I think money, we do have money in our budget to deploy more charging stations. Quite frankly, there are a number of barriers, and I'm going to list them not necessarily in order of importance. But number 1, you got to find site hosts that are willing to dedicate space for those charging stations, and that's not always easy. Number 2, you got to work with authorities having jurisdiction on building permits, and you get to work with utilities for starting a new service on the interconnection to the distribution grid. Now, I come from California, right, originally, and I always go back to the days of the solar installations, where originally a residential solar installation were taking months, and because of the commission directed utilities get your act in order, it went down to 3 days. I think that's what we need to do for DC fast charging to really maximize the speed of deployment. As an example, also Germany, they completely got away with building permits. Basically, in Germany, you self-certify, you say this is compliant, is up to code, and you build it without necessarily waiting months and months or going back and forth with the authorities having jurisdiction. It's bold, but if we could achieve something like this, I think in terms of coordinating across different jurisdictions, it would help a lot the industry. I'll stop here, but there are more headwinds, obviously.
Okay, thanks. Gabrielle was waiting quite a long while behind Steve, so maybe she can go up there next if Steve moves off number 2 there, number 1. Steve, can you move to the side?
I am trying.
Oh, okay. Maybe, or get there you go. All right, Gabrielle, move all the way down. Okay, sure. Go ahead now.
Hi. Sorry, I can't get my camera to work, but hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep, we can hear you.
I am co-chair of the Sustainability Advisory Board in the village of Pelham in Lower Westchester. And as a small municipality, one of our challenges in moving towards electrifying our fleet or even adding hybrids to our fleet is that we don't have the redundancy that many larger municipalities have. So reliability is really important, and quick, maintenance turnaround as well. And what we find is that, for example, our fire chief who needs a new vehicle really wants to speak to other fire chiefs about their experience with particular vehicles before they would consider something other than what they're more familiar with. So I was wondering if there's any kind of centralized inventory list or list of references, fire chiefs who have either electric or hybrid vehicles, for example, that I could reference. This might even be more of a question for Peter, who I see is still here from Westchester, if there's, local reference resources like that.
Peter, you want to come up and yep, there you go. Oh, you're muted. Unmute yourself, Peter.
Yeah, it's it's a struggle for us here in the county as well. We have over 140 plug-in electric vehicles, but really cracking the nut there in our police department has been difficult. There's been a real reticence to to adopt these electric vehicles. There's a fear with the hybrids and this and that. They're coming around, quite frankly, and with the hybrids, especially on the larger scale, the Highlander, we've got several of those that are used by like the county executive, some of our emergency services people, but they're not electric. They're just hybrid. So there just doesn't seem to be as many vehicles out there that are, applicable for what they need them for. So there's a little bit of a wait going on for that. I know on the high end, there are several vehicles out there, but they're $80, $90, $100,000 for, but that's just not working. So I'm sorry at this point, I don't have a better answer. Maybe Fabio or Myra or Jason have a better answer.
Gabrielle, maybe you wanted to unpack your question a little bit. Like you mentioned reliability as a potential challenge, and reliability means different things to different people. Can you maybe clarify exactly what the key concerns are when it comes to reliability for electric vehicles?
Yeah. I guess my example has more to do with hybrid than electric, but I know that the same thing would apply. As I mentioned, our fire chief is looking for a new vehicle, and he heard something negative about other, about the hybrid interceptor, for example. So even though we got him in touch with, or we were able to speak with somebody from New York City who had very good things to say about that vehicle, he really wants to speak with a fire chief who uses that particular vehicle to make sure it applies to his situation. So I know we're going to have that same challenge as we move, towards looking at electric vehicles as well. Does that help?
It does. And, some of the concerns that I hear from fleet managers is really two things, right? One is the operational overhead in charging those vehicles, making sure that, you plug it in, making sure that the day after is charged. And I think we're getting better. There are software tools that can help you tackle those challenges. And then the other piece of the reliability is range, right? You don't want to be, mid-route and then having to go back to the depot or having to stop at a charging station to recharge your vehicle. And I think that is going to be less of a problem. We are seeing vehicles right now. I think the Lucid was the last one that came out with over 500 mile of range. So I think from an pure EV, battery EV perspective, those reliability challenges around charging are going to diminish over time.
Great.
Okay, great. I don't think we have any more questioners, but I have a question. And this is for, well, I don't know, I guess maybe for Jason. Myra mentioned that the ZEV rebate program is not open to things like school buses. And in our community in Terrytown, we kind of proposed the idea of electric school buses to our combined school district, Terrytown, Sleepy Hollow, at one point. But the school superintendent said he looked into the pricing of buses, and he thought it was 3 times as much as a gas or diesel vehicle. I guess he used gas in school buses. And so it wasn't feasible to put that in the school budget. I'm wondering if there's some way that we can convince school districts to look at the longer term, because, I mean, first of all, school buses are ideal for electrification because they're used only a few hours a day. They can be charged at night, and they do, as they go through residential communities, gasoline school buses emit a lot of pollutants and use a lot of fossil fuels. So it seems like it's a shoe-in, but it seems like it's the most difficult thing to get districts and their taxpayers to agree to fund. And I'm just wondering where we can go there to help that. And I think Peter's at a microphone. He may want to speak.
Yeah,
too.
I was going to say, White Plains, they bought, I think, a handful of electric school buses. And it'd be best to, check with their superintendent of their school district. I don't how did they do it? How was it financed? How did they get through? Because they are expensive, and they are so little used. I think one of the programs that was out there was that using the school buses specifically for storage, actually. So, you store them up, and then when you're not using them, if there's some sort of emergency, there you go. You got a mobile battery, and you could put it to some place and use that as a secondary source. Also, for demand response events, perhaps during August or some sort of period of time. There's been a lot of talk about it. I'm not sure how well that's been fully utilized, but these are massive batteries and they're on wheels. You could roll them around to some place. And as we just said, they're used so infrequently, really, just a couple times a day.
Right. So electric school buses could solve the problem of not having enough long-term energy storage for renewable sources as well. If they were built with batteries that were large enough to handle more than a day of use, the utilities could utilize that power, a two-way charging infrastructure.
Dean, if I may, there is about $5 billion in funding across different buckets for school buses in the federal infrastructure bill. Some of it, hopefully a large part of it, is going to come to New York State. So I would say 2022 should be really interesting when it comes to school buses, electric school buses in particular.
Wow, that'll be great to look for. Okay. Peter's up there again.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that the underlying message all along here, is it's coming, and it's not just some pie in the sky. I mean, it's happening and it's coming, and the manufacturers are all gearing up. It's a matter of inventory. I mean, who doesn't want to get their hands on that electric Lightning, the F-150? I mean, especially with municipal staps. I know Fabio wants one. I take one, if my wife would allow me. Midlife crisis, what? But it's coming. And then, we want to really be set and prepared for the influx of renewable electric that's coming in off the wind and the transmission lines that are going to be bringing it down from the southern tier and the hydro programs and whatnot. So being ready and being set for it. There is that 3:00 meeting though, Dean. I don't know if you need to make a note of that.
Yeah, I think we should wrap up here. What do we have at 3? It's the annual meeting for NISAC, so some people may want to go to that. So I want to thank our panelists, Jason, Myra, and Fabio, and thank you all for coming to the conference and coming to this session. Look forward to seeing more good stuff on EVs and charging infrastructure in the future.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for having us.